All right, up next we have Drew Gelfeld from Vectra AI.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And actually, apologize, a quick pivot. My name's Zach Vaughn. I'm joining on behalf of Drew Gelfeld. I manage all of the security engineers here at Vectra AI, but appreciate the opportunity to present, and I will go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. Oh, I apologize. I'm having a slight technical difficulty um, with sharing. Let's see. Yeah, apologies, Katie, for the technical difficulty.
It's not a problem, they happen.
I'm going to try just exporting the presentation as a PDF, and I hope that that will that hopefully solve the issue. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, very good. I apologize for the delay. So again, my name's Zach Vaughn with Vectra AI. I just want to take the next couple of minutes to talk you through how we are differentiating ourselves in the space of network detect and response, bringing purpose-built AI and ML, and not just buzzword AI and ML, to solving the problem of uncovering attacker and adversarial behavior on a network. We do this in a number of unique ways. So I hope that everyone's able to take away from the section, the section of the briefing here, in that we don't require any type of signatures to be loaded into uncovering the detections that will surface into our solution. We don't require that you install any kind of agent or endpoint to be able to observe these behaviors and surface these detections. At the same time, we also don't require that you decrypt any of your network traffic, because that creates kind of its own data, well, not data spillage issues, but once you decrypt that traffic, then you're left with potentially sensitive information. So we can actually provide these highly efficacious network detections without the need to decrypt any of the network traffic. And lastly, we're able to run in fully air-gapped environments. So we have no requirement that you call back to any kind of cloud brain or cloud processing capability to provide any of these capabilities. So those are some big differentiators. I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes talking about how we actually bring that to bear to solve the problems that a lot of people are trying to address via, maybe through the term of building the next generation zero trust network, which is honestly really, really hard. I mean, if we think about collapsing down everything to a least privileged access model from both a user and a host and service perspective, paper architectures are great at providing, notionally how this might look, but I feel as though you hit this impasse where you look at today's operational processes and procedures, and then layering that in with essentially bolt everything down to the point that it just simply stops working. With Vectra's passive observing of network traffic and learning privilege and access of both users and hosts, I think we can actually help accelerate that journey, which is anywhere from a 5 to 10 year plus undertaking for most organizations. We can do that by basically showing that users may be granted a certain amount of privilege, but in fact, routinely, they're only leveraging a subset of that access and privilege. And so, if we can sit there and map out who has capabilities to do what, before we start tightening down the bolts associated with that privilege, we can ensure that we're not breaking or impacting any mission critical capabilities or access that certain individuals or servers or services may need to access. So it is very much a journey, and I think Vectra can be one part of an organization's tool set in approaching this particular problem. And we can do this again leveraging the increased stamina and endurance, and I guess the longevity of the observational capabilities that our particular solution brings to bear. And what I mean by that is that instead of trying to throw human capital at this problem of understanding environments, both from an attacker behavior perspective, but also from a privilege and access perspective, um, that can that's a lot of time and human capital investment upfront that's being asked of that. And so if you have this dispassionate, objective, and tireless observer through true AI and ML capability, passively observing everything that's transpiring across a network, we can tell you not only where you are relative to your desired end state from a privilege and access perspective, but also from a compliance, um, as well as a compliance and how that maps again to that zero trust type of architecture. So again, really just as another example of sitting there and looking and learning at what an account may have access to over a period of time. And then over time, once you've observed that, well, the privilege granted initially actually exceeds the amount of access that account needs to have at any given point in time, we can perhaps start to slowly tighten that down. But how do we do, what I've said, that, we can sit here and provide these types of capabilities on a network without having, whoops, build doesn't translate to PDF, but without having to install any kind of agents or endpoints, without decrypting traffic. Vectra if I were to distill it down, we're a sensor and brain topology. We hang our sensors off of TAP or SPAN or packet broker aggregators. We capture raw network traffic and we enrich the metadata associated with the raw network capture data. We forward all of that traffic from those sensors over to a brain. And within the brain, that's where Vectra's patented AI and ML algorithms, a combination of trained and untrained algorithms, about 75 plus at most recent count, interrogate all of that network metadata, all of that network traffic metadata. Um, and we feed all of the observed metadata through all of the different models, so that we're not going to necessarily miss any particular type of signal, as opposed to using just a predefined set of generic algorithms. So we use a combination of trained and untrained models. The trained models, I'll give a couple of examples of some of the types of behaviors that those are better suited to uncovering, as well as I'll give you an example to what the untrained models have been built to do, specifically around the concept of understanding privilege within an environment. But a very flexible topology. We can support a host of sensors feeding into a single brain, and that can be through either a combination of either physical appliances or virtual appliances, both at the brain and sensor configuration. And at the end of the day, what the all of those models that we're leveraging in the Vectra platform have been built over the last 10 years through this really deep integration and partnership of our security researchers, think white hat hackers, and data scientists. So the security researchers working hand in hand with their respective counterparts on the data science teams, feeding them attacker methods, and the data scientists developing purpose-built algorithms tuned specifically to detect those types of attacker behaviors. We map all of this. Oh, sorry, getting ahead of myself. Well, I'll finish the thought. We map all of this to the MITRE attack and defend frameworks. At most recent count, we have over 12 patented models mapped to MITRE defend, and we're working very closely with MITRE as we're building out that defend framework. It's taking a step back though, just to level set for folks. When we talk about AI and ML, with AI and the type of AI that we're bringing to bear, we don't mean that AI is not equivalent to cognition. We're not. There's no self-awareness within Vectra, but instead we are creating. We're ingesting data and we are providing rational outputs, meaning that the outputs provided by Vectra can be consumed by a human, observed by a human, And the information presented via those outputs is something that a rational thought process could also produce, and that can be interacted with rationally by a human actor. So we're not trying to replace any type of SOC analyst with the behavioral detections that Vectra provides. Instead, we're looking and focused on up leveling the overworked and overstressed cyber defenders protecting our nation's critical infrastructure and mission assets. So to give you a couple of examples, I mentioned where we're kind of hanging all of these behavioral based detections off of both the MITRE ATT&CK and defend frameworks. But to get into the kind of the nitty gritty of the particular approach that we've chosen to take, where we're creating specific types of models built specifically around attacker behaviors. We're thinking like attackers. So we're analyzing attacker TTPs. We're looking at the countermeasures that one might need to take in order to address those types of known attacker behaviors. And then rather than just use a handful of generic algorithms, a lot of other solutions will sit there and look and try and say, well, this is anomalous, this is novel, we've not seen these types of behaviors on the network before. Um, Novel or unusual is not necessarily indicative of bad. So again, really focusing on that deep interaction between the security researchers who have who have a real understanding and grounding in the way in which attackers try and navigate within a network once they've established presence. That's how we've built our detection models. To give you a couple of examples, this is a handful of the detections that we can fire out of the box. But I was using as an example before the trained and untrained models that Vectra uses. And one of the examples of an untrained model that is ubiquitously applicable to any environment is understanding adversarial C2. Again, stressing that we're able to detect real attacker-based command and control without the need to decrypt any of the traffic. And the way in which we do this is it's hinged a little bit in the type of metadata format that we're using to analyze the network traffic, but we're time slicing at such a small interval that we're able to analyze not just the number of packets, but the rate at which a host is being interacted with as it's sending a command and receiving um, the the signal from the other side and observing that fluctuation. So just to compare, there's a lot of other solutions that can sit there and say, oh yeah, we've detected that there is some kind of hidden HTTPS tunneling going on within your environment. There's any number of reasons why there may be a legitimate need to leverage legitimate services leveraging HTTPS traffic and tunneled traffic. What we care about, though, is not flooding an analyst with a bunch of, oh my gosh, here's all these hidden HTTP tunnels. Here are the ones specifically that, based on our deep learning recurrent neural network based algorithms, that we can actually surface and give you a high level of confidence that if you go and investigate those, you're better utilizing your time versus just chasing after abnormal within an environment. Um, on the flip side of that, looking at some of the untrained models where we do have to better understand and learn privilege within an environment. This is important not only because if you're concerned about insider threat, somebody with legitimate system access, either being coerced or through whatever reason they've now taken to misusing the system with which they've been granted access to, or more often than not, what is the case is that credentials have somehow been swiped, and so there is a bad actor um, working within the network, aping the persona and requisite access associated with an individual whose credentials have been swiped. Um, Want to pause there for a moment, though, to emphasize the fact that the untrained models, as they're learning within an environment, they're also forgetting. So it's not good enough to just learn from a specific static point in time what the observed behaviors of individuals access and host access, but the models that are learning are also continuously forgetting. So what that means is that an adversary or an insider bad actor can't try and disguise themselves amidst the normal goings on within a network and appear normal. At the end of the day, um, the attacker has to follow a certain almost archetypal set of behaviors to advance their access and presence within a network. And that's what Vectra is focused on uncovering. They can move as low and slow as they would like, but ultimately, in order to grab the data that they want, to exfiltrate the data that they want to grab, to take out of that network, they have to take certain steps. And so we're not focused on the initial method of compromise. Again, we're not using any kind of signatures. We're literally looking at the raw attacker behaviors that as mapped again back to MITRE ATT&CK and defend, that these adversaries have to take once they're in established presence within a network. Just to reemphasize the fact that focusing on just what is abnormal or using simple anomalies just doesn't provide enough dimension into a highly efficacious behavioral detection. So when we're looking at perhaps a suspicious sign-on, if somebody's pivoted from an on-premises environment into, say, an M365 environment, instead of just looking at, oh, this is a novel IP address, this is an unusual time of day, they're logging on from a new device. I mean, those are all different, but at the end of the day, there could be legitimate reasons for any of those. We're actually analyzing that in over 22 dimensions to give you real confidence in the signal that we're providing that there's something, actually actionable going on within the environment. And at the end of the day, just to reiterate this, it's because we're thinking like attackers. We're thinking about the steps that they have to take once that initial point of compromise has taken place, and following basically the attacker kill chain, so that we can stop a threat before it becomes a full-blown breach. And we can do this from an on-premises environment, pivoting up into cloud space, or the vice versa, where an attack may begin in a cloud space and then pivot to an on-premises attack. I mentioned the topologies are pretty flexible. So we, again, protecting not only on-premises assets from a user account and host and services perspective, but for folks that are leveraging clouds or even tracking detections on wholly air-gapped embedded weapon systems. So as an example, anything that has an IP address that touches a network, if it passes through one of the entry points where we have one of Vectra sensors placed, we're going to be able to observe that network traffic and grab the enriched metadata from it. I know I got started a little quickly, but I want to jump ahead to just showcase a few examples of what this looks like, from an analyst point of view. So when somebody logs into the Vectra UI, we might be monitoring 100,000 hosts, but we're only going to be surfacing what we view as with a high level of confidence, actionable detections. Kind of anything above this red line is going to be where your analyst needs to focus their attention. Anything beneath that line is kind of opportunistic hunting. They're plotted against a threat and certainty score. Not only the detected behaviors each receive their own threat and certainty score. Threat being kind of the blast radius that if this were in fact an attack, associated with an attack, what's the potential harm? And then certainty being the confidence with which we can assert this is actually taking place. Those behaviors, when mapped back to those users or hosts, are then aggregated to provide a unified score for both user accounts as well as hosts. And we're stitching together over time what these entities are. So what a host is comprised of both observed IP addresses as well as additional network artifacts. So feeding in things like Kerberos traffic, AD integration, DNS, vCenter, EDR solutions. So we're really giving you a robust view as to what a host looks like. Similarly, understanding users and their observed privileges. And again, mapping over time and contextualizing the behaviors associated with each. And Katie, I know we're running right up to time, so I want to pause there.
Yep, just a few more seconds. Yep, wrap it up.
Okay. Well, and this is just a quick view. I'd welcome the opportunity to talk in depth or provide a more full-blown demo of the capability, and I appreciate everybody's time today.
All right. Thank you very much. We will begin our next presentation in 5 minutes at 1:55. Thank you.